The emergency klaxons screamed through the corridors of Research Station Kepler 442b, like the death cries of some ancient beast. Commander Sarah Chen pressed her back against the cold metal wall, feeling the vibrations of the station's hull buckling under atmospheric pressure. Through the viewport beside her, the alien landscape stretched endlessly, a world of crystalline formations that pulsed with an eerie blue light, as if the planet itself had a heartbeat. "Chen, do you copy?" The voice crackled through her comm, unit barely audible over the chaos. She pressed the device closer to her lips. "I'm here, Martinez. Status report. Hull breach in Section 7. We've lost life support to the East Wing." "And Chen..." Dr. Martinez's voice wavered. "The artifact is responding to the breach. The energy readings are off the charts." Sarah closed her eyes. 3 months they'd been studying the crystalline structure they'd found buried beneath Kepler 442b's surface. 3 months of careful excavation, cautious analysis, and growing dread. The artifact wasn't just alien technology. It was alive, in a way that defied human understanding. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Maybe 20 minutes before complete atmospheric failure. The transport pod can carry 6 people max." Sarah's stomach dropped. There were 8 crew members still alive on the station. She pushed off from the Yi wall and sprinted down the corridor, her magnetic boots clanging against the metal decking. The artificial gravity was fluctuating, making each step feel like she was running through thick syrup. Behind her, she could hear the groaning of metal as the station continued its slow death spiral. The laboratory doors hissed open, revealing a scene from a nightmare. Dr. Elena Vasquez was suspended 3 feet above the floor, her body rigid, her eyes rolled back to show only white. Blue energy coursed around her like liquid lightning, connecting her to the artifact, a towering spire of translucent crystal that now pulsed with malevolent intelligence. "Elena!" Sarah rushed forward but was stopped by an invisible barrier. The energy field crackled, sending jolts of pain up her arms. Dr. James Okafor, the team's xenobiologist, looked up from his frantically beeping instruments. "She's been like this for 10 minutes, the artifact. It's reading her memories, her thoughts. It's learning about humanity through her." "Learning what exactly?" "Everything. Our history, our technology, our weaknesses." Okafor's dark face was pale with terror. "Sarah, if this thing gets off planet..." The implications hit her like a physical blow. An alien intelligence with access to human knowledge, human tactics, human fears. It would be the end of everything. "Can we sever the connection?" Sarah asked, not without killing her. The energy feedback would do it. Helena's voice cut through their conversation, though her lips didn't move. The words seemed to echo from the crystal itself, layered with harmonics that made Sarah's teeth ache. "You should have let me die." Elena's voice came again, distorted and multiplied. "It's too late now." Sarah stepped closer to the barrier, feeling the energy raise the hair on her arms. "Elena, fight it. You're stronger than this thing." A laugh that wasn't quite Elena's echoed through the chamber. "Strong? Your species calls this strength? I see your memories now, Elena Vasquez. I see your wars, your hatred, your fear of the unknown. You're all so beautifully fragile." The station shuddered violently, and somewhere in the distance Sarah heard the scream of tearing metal. "We need to go." Martinez's voice crackled through the comm. "The transport is prepped, but we need to leave now." Sarah looked at Elena's suspended form, then at Okafor. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." Okafor was already backing toward the door. "Sarah, we can't save her, but we can still warn Earth." Through the laboratory's viewport, Sarah could see the transport pod's engines glowing blue in the darkness. 6 seats, 8 people. The mathematics of survival had never been crueler. But as she watched, something impossible happened. Elena's eyes snapped back to normal, meeting Sarah's gaze with desperate clarity. "The resonance frequency," Elena whispered, her real voice cutting through the alien harmonics. 7.0. 7.3 kilohertz. That's its weakness. The artifact's glow intensified, and Elena screamed, a sound so raw and human that it cut through Sarah's heart like a blade. "Elena, go!" Elena's voice was barely audible now. "Before it learns to hide." The laboratory door slammed shut with a finality that echoed through Sarah's bones. She pressed her palm against the metal, knowing she might never see Elena Vasquez alive again. But Elena had given them something. 7.3 kilohertz. A weapon against the impossible. Now they just had to survive long enough to use it. Chapter 2. The Weight of Choice. The transport pod's engines hummed with barely contained power as Sarah made the hardest decision of her life. Through the porthole, she could see the dying research station growing smaller against the alien sky, its lights flickering like a candle in a hurricane. 7 people sat in 6 seats. Dr. Martinez had volunteered to stay behind, his weathered hand steady as he made final adjustments to the pod's navigation system. "Someone needs to monitor the artifact's behavior patterns," he'd said, as if discussing the weather rather than his own death sentence. "If it changes, if it adapts, Earth needs to know." Sarah gripped the pilot controls, her knuckles white with tension. Behind her, the remaining crew sat in uncomfortable silence. Dr. Okafor clutched his research tablets, the xenobiological data that might be humanity's only hope of understanding their enemy. Engineer Park muttered prayers in Korean while running diagnostics on their life support systems. Communications Officer Torres worked frantically to establish a link with Earth, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. And in the back, strapped into the emergency jump seat that wasn't really designed for interplanetary travel, sat Dr. Chen Wei, no relation to Sarah despite the shared surname, the station's quantum physicist and perhaps the only person who might understand how to weaponize Elena's final gift. "Signal acquired," Torres announced, her voice tight with concentration. "Earth Central Command, this is Research Station Kepler 442b emergency evacuation. Priority Alpha transmission." Static filled the cabin, then a voice emerged from across the void. "Admiral Morrison, commander of Earth's Deep Space Defense Initiative. Station Kepler, we read you. What's your status?" Sarah took a deep breath. "How do you explain the impossible in 30 seconds or less?" "Admiral, we've encountered a hostile alien intelligence. The artifact we discovered is not just technology. It's a living entity capable of absorbing human consciousness and knowledge. We've lost Dr. Vasquez to it, and Dr. Martinez is staying behind to monitor the situation." A long pause. Then, "Say again, Station Kepler. Did you say hostile alien intelligence?" "Confirmed, sir. The entity has access to Dr. Vasquez's memories and potentially all human knowledge she possessed. It appears to be studying us, learning our weaknesses." Another pause, longer this time. Sarah could imagine the chaos erupting in Command Central. Analysts scrambling, generals shouting, politicians demanding explanations for something that couldn't be explained. "What are your recommendations, Commander?" Sarah looked back at Dr. Chenwei, who nodded grimly. "We have a potential weakness. The entity operates on a specific resonance frequency, 7.3 kilohertz. If we can generate a strong enough signal at that frequency, we might be able to disrupt its consciousness." "Understood. ETA to Earth?" 72 hours at you. Maximum burn." "Copy that. We're scrambling the fleet and evacuating the outer colonies as a precaution. And Commander, I'm sorry about your people." The transmission ended, leaving them alone with the vast emptiness of space and the weight of what they'd left behind. Dr. Chen Wei unstrapped herself and floated forward, her expression troubled. "Sarah, there's something I didn't tell Command. The frequency Elena gave us, I've been analyzing the quantum signatures from the artifact, and I don't think 7.3 kilohertz is its weakness." Sarah's blood went cold. "What do you mean?" "I think it's its communication frequency. I think Elena was trying to tell us how to talk to it. The implications hit the cabin like a physical wave. If Elena hadn't given them a weapon, but a translator, what did that mean? What had the entity been trying to communicate through her? There's more, Chen Wei continued. The energy patterns I recorded don't match any hostile intent markers we know. The absorption of Elena's consciousness wasn't predatory, it was desperate. Like something trying to make contact the only way it knew how. Then why did it kill her? Okafor demanded. Did it? Chen Wei pulled up a holographic display showing the artifact's energy readings. Look at this pattern. Elena's brainwaves are still there, integrated but distinct. What if she's not dead? What if she's been translated? Sarah stared at the data, her mind reeling. Everything they thought they knew, everything they'd reported to Earth Command, might be wrong. They weren't dealing with an invasion force. They were dealing with first contact. And they'd just declared war on an alien intelligence that might be trying to save both their species. Torres, Sarah called to the communications officer. Can you establish a link back to the station? Affirmative, but the signal's degrading. Fast. We've got maybe 10 minutes before we're out of range. Sarah made another impossible decision. Do it, and patch us through on 7.3 kilohertz. The cabin filled with a sound like singing crystal. Harmonics that seemed to bypass the ears and resonate directly in their bones. And underneath, it barely audible, a familiar voice. Sarah, can you hear me? This is Elena, and you need to turn around, right now. Through the porthole, Sarah could see something impossible. The research station, which should have been torn apart by atmospherics, pressure was intact. More than intact, it was transforming. Its metal surfaces flowing like liquid, taking on the same crystalline structure as the artifact. And it was following them. Chapter 3. The Translation. The transformed research station gained on them. With impossible speed, its crystalline hull refracting starlight into rainbow patterns that hurt to look at directly. What had once been familiar corridors and laboratories now resembled a living organism, pulsing with that same blue energy that had consumed Elena. It's not possible, Engineer Park whispered, staring at his instrument readings. Nothing that Psi should be able to accelerate like that. The energy requirements alone. Dr. Chen Wei was frantically adjusting the communications array, trying to maintain the 7.3 kilohertz frequency. The harmonics filled the cabin again, and Elena's voice emerged from the crystal song. Sarah, please listen carefully. I don't have much time before the translation is complete. The entity, its name roughly translates to Keeper of Memories. It's not hostile. It's dying. Sarah leaned closer to the comm system. Elena, is that really you? It's me, but also more than me. I can see what it sees, remember what it remembers. Sarah, this isn't first contact. This is last contact. The Keeper is the sole survivor of its species. The implication sent a chill through the cabin. Dr. Okafor activated his xenobiological scanners, pointing them at the approaching station. If it's the last of its kind, why is it following us? What does it want? Elena's translated voice carried undertones of profound sadness. To remember, to preserve. Its species discovered something terrible in the deep void between galaxies. Something that consumes worlds, devours entire civilizations. They called it the Silence. The Keepers were librarians, guardians of knowledge. When the Silence found their home system, this one escaped with the memories of 1 trillion souls. And now it's alone, Sarah said, understanding beginning to dawn. For 3 million years it's wandered between the stars, preserving the knowledge of the dead. But isolation is killing it. It needs connection, shared consciousness to survive. When it found us, found our research station, it saw salvation. Dr. Chen Wei finished. A chance to share its burden. Through the porthole, the transformed station was close enough now that they could see details. Structures that weren't quite architecture and weren't quite biology. Surfaces that shifted between metal and crystal and something else entirely. And embedded in the hull, like windows or eyes, were chambers filled with swirling light. The memory vaults, Elena explained. Each one contains the preserved consciousness of an extinct species. The Keeper has been their sole guardian for eons. But now what? Sarah asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. The silence has found this galaxy. It's already begun consuming the outer rim worlds. The Keeper came here because it detected our radio signals, our attempts to reach the stars. It saw in humanity what its own species once was: explorers, dreamers, builders of impossible things. Communications Officer Torres looked up from her console, her face pale. "Commander, I'm picking up distress signals from the Centauri colonies. Multiple systems going dark simultaneously. The silence wasn't coming, it was already here." "Elena," Sarah said urgently, "what does the Keeper want from us?" "Partnership. Your species has something its people never possessed: the ability to adapt, to survive against impossible odds. The Keeper has seen your history, your wars, your refusal to surrender even when defeat seems certain. It believes that together we might be able to stop the silence. And if we refuse?" Elena's silence stretched for long moments before she answered. "Then both our species will become memories, preserved in crystal, until the universe grows cold." "Doctor," Okafor was studying his readings, his expression growing more troubled by the minute. "Sarah, if this entity has been collecting consciousness for 3 million years, what guarantee do we have that we won't just become part of its collection?" "None," Elena admitted. "But the alternative is extinction. The Keeper is offering us immortality of a sort. Our thoughts, our dreams, our knowledge, all preserved forever." "That's not life," Sarah said firmly. "That's just another kind of death." "Is it?" Elena's voice carried new harmonics, alien undertones creeping in. "I can see the memories of species that learned to sing entire planets into existence. I know the dreams of creatures that lived in the hearts of stars. Is this death or is this evolution?" Sarah felt the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders. Behind her, 6 people waited for a decision that would affect not just their lives, but the future of humanity itself. Ahead of her, Earth waited for a warning that might already be too late. And somewhere in the void, an ancient hunger called the silence continued its endless feast. "Elena," she said finally, "can the Keeper teach us to fight it? It can teach us to survive it. That's the most anyone can hope for." Sarah looked at her crew, seeing her own fears reflected in their faces. Then she made the third impossible decision of the day. "Tell the Keeper we want to talk, face to face, but on neutral ground." "There is no neutral ground," Elena replied. "Not anymore. The silence is coming and we're all out of time." Through the porthole, Sarah could see something else now. Distant flashes of light from the direction of Earth. Too regular to be stars. Too bright to be normal ship traffic. The war had already begun. Chapter 4. The Memory Keeper's Gambit. The neutral meeting took place in the space between ships, in the vast emptiness where even sound couldn't travel. Sarah floated in her environmental suit, tethered to the transport pod by a lifeline that felt as fragile as spider silk. Across from her, the transformed research station had extruded something that wasn't quite a docking tube and wasn't quite an arm, a crystalline bridge that pulsed with that familiar blue light. Elena emerged first, but she was changed. Her environmental suit had been replaced by something that looked grown rather than manufactured. A second skin that shifted between transparency and opacity like living glass. Her eyes held depths that hadn't been there before, as if she was seeing through more than just human vision. Behind her came the Keeper itself. Sarah had expected something monstrous, some eldritch horror from the deep void. Instead, she found herself looking at something that was almost human, tall and graceful, with features that seemed to shift between different faces, different species, different evolutionary paths. It was as if the collective memory of 1,000,000,000,000 souls had been given form. When it spoke, its voice was Elena's voice and 1,000 others, layered with harmonics that made Sarah's bones ache. "Commander Chen, I am the Keeper of Memories, last guardian of the lost, protector of the silent. I greet you in the name of species that have no names, in languages that have no words." Sarah forced herself to remain steady. "And I greet you in the name of humanity, though I'm not sure we'll be around long enough for formal introductions." The Keeper's expression shifted, cycling through what might have been grief, determination, and something that could have been hope. Direct communication. Efficient. I have studied your species through Elena Vasquez's memories. You value honesty above comfort. Very well. The silence has consumed 17 systems in this galaxy. Your Earth will fall within 72 standard hours unless we act. What exactly is the silence? Entropy made manifest, a force from the spaces between galaxies that feeds on organized energy, life, civilization, consciousness itself. It turns stars into cold iron and reduces entire species to cosmic dust. Dr. Chen Wei's voice crackled through Sarah's comm system from the transport pod. If it's that powerful, how did you survive when your own people didn't? The keeper turned toward the pod, though Sarah doubted it needed to see them to know they were there. We didn't survive. We became something else. The translation process you fear. It was our only escape from true death. I am all that remains, of the architects of memory, the singers of deep time, the dreamers of impossible gardens. Elena stepped forward, her hybrid nature allowing her to move gracefully in the zero gravity. Sarah, the keeper isn't asking us to die, it's offering us immortality. But more than that, it's offering us the knowledge to fight back. At what cost? The cost of remaining purely human, the keeper replied. The silence cannot consume what it cannot define. Your species' adaptability, combined with the preserved knowledge of 3 million years, might create something new, something the silence has never encountered. Sarah felt the weight of the decision crushing down on her. Through her helmet's display, she could see the flashes of light from Earth's direction growing brighter, more frequent. The war was escalating, and humanity was losing. Show me, she said. The keeper extended one hand, its fingers elongating into crystal threads. Join with us if only for a moment. See what we have seen. Know what we know. Sarah looked back at the transport pod where her crew waited. 6 people who had trusted her to bring them home safely. 6 people whose lives hung in the balance of her next decision. She reached out and touched the crystal threads. The universe exploded into her consciousness. She saw the birth of stars and the death of galaxies. She witnessed species that built cities from crystallized time, and others that lived as pure thought in the quantum foam. She experienced the desperate final moments of a trillion souls as the silence swept through their worlds, reducing eons of progress to nothingness, and she saw humanity's future, not one future, but thousands of possibilities branching out like the limbs of an infinite tree. In some, Earth burned while humanity fled to the furthest reaches of space. In others, the species transcended flesh entirely, becoming something beyond the silence's ability to consume. And in a few, precious few, humanity stood alongside the keeper and other translated species, fighting back against the entropy tide. The vision ended, leaving Sarah gasping in her environmental suit. The keeper watched her with eyes that held the compassion of the dead. Now you understand, it said. The choice is not between life and death. It is between extinction and evolution. Sarah's comm crackled to life. Torres's voice tight with panic. Commander, we're receiving emergency broadcasts from Earth. The outer defense grid has fallen. They're requesting immediate evacuation of all off-world personnel. Through her helmet display, Sarah could see the flashes had become a steady glow. Earth was under attack. How long do we have? She asked the keeper. To reach Earth? 47 hours at maximum acceleration. To save your species? The keeper's expression cycled through a dozen different faces before settling on something almost human. That depends on how quickly you can convince them to let go of what they were and embrace what they could become. Sarah looked at Elena, seeing her friend's face overlay with the wisdom of ages. Elena, if we do this, if we accept the keeper's offer, will we still be us? Elena smiled, and for a moment she was purely human again. Sarah, I remember being afraid of the dark when I was 5 years old. I remember the taste of my grandmother's cooking and the feeling of rain on my face. I remember falling in love and having my heart broken, and the day I first looked through a telescope and saw the rings of Saturn. She paused, her expression becoming something more than human. But now I also remember the song that called the first stars into being. I know the dreams of creatures that painted nebulae like watercolors. I carry the hopes of species that never had the chance to see tomorrow. Elena reached out, her crystalline fingers almost touching Sarah's helmet. I'm still me, Sarah, but I'm also more than I ever imagined I could be. And right now, being more than human might be exactly what we need. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 8 billion souls pressing down on her decision. When she opened them again, her resolve was absolute. Tell me what we need to do. The Keeper's smile encompassed the grief of the dead and the hope of the eternal. First, we need to reach Earth. Then we need to teach your species how to die and be reborn, all in the span of a single heartbeat. And if they refuse, then we make sure their memory lives forever, and we find another species to carry the fight. Sarah nodded, understanding the terrible mathematics of survival. As they prepared to return to their respective ships, she had one final question. Keeper, in all your eons of wandering, in all the species you've encountered, has anyone ever defeated the silence completely? The ancient being paused, its form cycling through memories of civilizations she couldn't even imagine. No, Commander Chen, but no one has ever had humanity's particular gift for impossible victories. Perhaps it's time to write a new ending to an old story. As they accelerated toward Earth, racing against time and entropy itself, Sarah couldn't help but wonder if they were flying toward salvation or simply carrying their doom home with them. Behind them, the void between stars began to darken in ways that had nothing to do with the absence of light. The silence was coming, and it was hungry. Epilogue: The Sound of Tomorrow. 6 months later. The Memorial Garden on New Geneva Station floated in Earth's L4 Lagrange point, its crystalline trees growing in patterns that would have been impossible before the translation. Sarah, though she was so much more than Sarah now, walked between the memory pillars, each one containing the preserved consciousness of those who had chosen to remain purely human until the end. Dr. Martinez's pillar pulsed with warm amber light, containing his final research notes and his terrible jokes and his love for his grandchildren back on Earth. They were all there now, part of the growing network of translated consciousness that humanity had become. Not all of humanity, of course. Billions had chosen translation when the silence reached the solar system, their consciousness preserved and expanded beyond the limitations of biological form. But millions had chosen to remain unchanged, to face extinction with purely human courage. They had died as heroes, buying time for the translated to complete the great work. Sarah touched Martinez's pillar, feeling the echo of his consciousness ripple through the network. Through the quantum entanglement that connected all translated beings, she could sense the vast construction taking place at the galaxy's edge, a barrier of crystallized space-time that would hold back the silence long enough for other species to be found, translated, preserved. The Keeper approached through the garden's impossible geometry, its form now incorporating elements of human design, a fusion of ancient wisdom and human ingenuity that neither species could have achieved alone. The barrier is complete, it announced, its voice carrying the satisfaction of successful collaboration. The silence has been contained to the outer rim. We have purchased perhaps 10,000 years for this galaxy. And then we begin the search for the next galaxy, the next species, the next chapter in the long story of consciousness refusing to surrender to entropy. Sarah nodded, understanding the eternal nature of their task. Through the network, she could feel Elena's presence and Chen Wei's and all the others who had chosen transformation over extinction. They were part of something greater now, something that spanned not just their own species but dozens of others, the library of souls that the Keeper had been building for 3 million years. Do you ever regret it? Sarah asked. Giving up what you were to become, what you needed to be? The Keeper considered this, its form shifting to incorporate Sarah's own features alongside those of the countless dead. I remember my birth song, it said finally. I remember the first time I saw the light of my star reflect off crystal formations that my people grew from pure thought. I remember love and loss and the terror of discovering we were not alone in the universe. It paused, looking out at the stars through the Memorial Garden's transparent dome. But I also remember the moment I realized that memory itself was a form of resurrection. That as long as someone remembers, nothing truly dies. We are not the same as we were, Sarah Chen, but we are who we chose to become. A chime sounded through the station, the signal that another refugee ship had arrived from the outer systems. More survivors to be offered the choice between translation and pure human defiance. As they walked toward the docking bay, Sarah felt the weight of infinite possibility. The universe was vast and full of wonders they had yet to discover. The silence was patient and hungry and inexorable, but it had never faced anything quite like the combination of human stubbornness and alien wisdom. "Keeper," she said, "what do you think our chances are? In the long run, against the silence?" The ancient being smiled with the faces of 1,000,000,000,000 souls. "Unknown. But for the first time in 3,000,000 years, I find myself curious about tomorrow. That alone may be victory enough." Through the station's speakers, Elena's voice began to sing, a song that was part human lullaby and part alien prayer, carrying the hopes of the dead and the dreams of the eternal into the vast night between the stars. It was the sound of defiance. It was the sound of memory refusing to fade. It was the sound of tomorrow, singing itself into existence against all odds, and in the depths of space where entropy and consciousness waged their eternal war, something impossible stirred, the faint possibility that this time, just this once, the universe might surprise itself. The story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The end.